here would be an interesting kind of part of the conversation to have, which is that, people look at someone like you, maybe they're, following you on, Instagram or YouTube. I mean, you have a couple million people that follow you between all your platforms.
Yeah.
And they see you flying on private jets and making all this cool stuff and talking about, the billions of dollars of transactions that you've done. And then maybe they start to feel discouraged because they go, Kris is so smooth. He talks so well. He spouts these stats off so easily. So, for me, when I was struggling with trying to get my first business win, what really helped me was to learn about people's struggles, like seeing someone like you and sharing this was the one time where it didn't quite go well and here's how I handled it. So would you be willing to share one failure, a really tough time in business and how you overcame it?
Well, let's actually just start with the whole wasted first decade of entrepreneurship, right? After I had my first 25 homes and that next year I went to 50 homes and then I went to 100 homes, I was scaling my real estate, but I started leveraging the wrong model. And I started selling, on my original portfolio, I owned 50% of every house that investors would put up the money for. So for them, this was a passive play. The unique selling proposition was they wanted to invest in real estate because they knew that 90% of millionaires made their money in real estate, but they didn't want to pick up another job. They had a career. And I came in and I said, well, you've got 401k money that's not really doing anything for you. It's earning single digits. You have same thing with your IRA. Even the equity in your home is doing the same thing. I said, pull some of that out and let me put it into real estate and I'll do 100% of the work. And this is what the partnership is. You supply the money, I supply the work, and we'll split profits 50-50. And people really like that. And I did that for my first 100 homes and it was working amazing. And then I formed a business partnership that convinced me that I should sell this as a service, not as a partnership. And I spent the rest of the decade transacting thousands of properties that I had no ownership in. The people came to me by way of my personality, and my partner also said, we don't want to brand you. We want to brand the business. We want to make this company exitable. And I basically followed him, for a decade. At the end of the decade, I basically gave up the entire business for $1 to get out of it. And what I gained, what I had was a lot of life experience. What I had was a lot that I had done right. And, after 2008, within the first 5 years, my investors cleared over $100 million in profits. And I got none of that. And so there was painful lessons in my original model, what I gave up to be in a partnership, what I learned from that partnership. And so I look at that first decade and I basically really walked away with nothing, except for a lot of lessons. And one of the things that I did learn was that you have to value the lesson more than the money. Because if you really learn the lessons, this is unfortunately in entrepreneurship where a lot of us get stuck, is we experience failure and we don't know how to process that. We beat up on ourselves and we tell ourselves, well, I'm not a naturally born entrepreneur and I'm not made for this and others are better at this. And look at Kris and look at the others, they figured it out. I want to be really clear. I was a full-on F up for the first decade. I didn't know how to read financials. I didn't know how to look at the accounting and turn that into any type of really solid decision-making. There were aspects of the business that I just full-on ignored. I really liked the rainmaking. I really liked driving revenue and I really liked building systems. And then I was ignoring some of the business and that made me a very, very weak business owner. And that first decade, I kind of walked away with nothing. But 5 years after that, I was able to do more in the next 5 years than really not just the last 10 years, but what it could have felt like the last 100 years, right? And that's because I learned my lessons. And so there was definitely some pain along the way. I remember borrowing $1 million once from this Jewish Iranian man on this deal. I was buying real estate at a 93% discount. I thought there's no way you can buy real estate and lose money if you're picking it up after '08 with a 93% discount. And let me tell you, you can lose money on 93% discounts after 2008 when you go national for the first time. And I remember when I finally scrimped and saved everything I could to pay back that $1 million. I mean, dude, scariest day in my life. I probably shouldn't even share it. Scariest day in my life was this dude would call me up. He had this really deep voice. He's like, Kris, I need my money. He was telling me about his Jewish Iranian heritage and how serious he was about never losing money. And I felt like my life was being threatened. Just earlier, I've been in Hawaii with my family trying to enjoy vacation. And he would call me every day. And I was so miserable on this trip. Well, after I got back, I'm sitting in my office one day and this black Escalade pulls up and 4 dudes in black suits and suitcases get out. And my mind is thinking, this is it. There are guns in those suitcases and the Jewish Iranian man has come to collect his debts in the form of my blood. And I kid you not, I was on my hands and knees with my head poking out the door as I was listening all the way down the hall to the reception desk at what they wanted. And it turns out there was just a random group of people there to sell business suits. And in that moment, I'm like, like, this is the worst stress I've ever felt in my life. And so, yeah, you want to talk about my mess ups? My first decade, I did not have enough mentorship. I didn't have someone showing me the ropes. I also didn't have someone saying, hello, ding dong. You know, franchise is going to be literally 100 times easier than what it is you're trying to do, building stuff from scratch and not always getting the best advice. So yeah, I mean, that first decade, I honestly could have thrown in the towel. I could have given up.
Why, why didn't you? I mean, it's so easy to just give up and kind of let it go. Why do you think, why were you so resilient?
So there was a couple of reasons. Number one, I was even then an avid consumer of personal development. I was in masterminds. I was in all sorts of different programs, taking courses, and an avid reader, usually reading, 1, 2, or 3 books every single month. And I was either reading business books or I was reading books on just personal, on mindset, personal development, positive mental attitude, the law of attraction, all of these kind of ideas. And I saw a connection between the energy inside my head and my positivity and the results I was producing. So even when everything went back to zero, I felt liberated, I felt free, and I felt excited. And I felt excited to do things differently. What I did was figure out where I had failed as a business owner. I figured out what I was unwilling to learn, which was basically accounting. And I'm not talking about going back to school and getting an accounting degree. I basically signed up for a 4-day program and sat with Keith Cunningham for 4 days and had him teach me how to read financials. And after that 4 days, I finished plugging in every last gap that I was missing. Social media took off and I took off, and everything has never been the same since. So, as an entrepreneur, the reality is I believe every entrepreneur has to go through a journey of School of Hard Knocks. That journey is short if you have a great mentor and you're doing a lot of reading and learning, and it's long if you're like most people. I'm a lone wolf. I'm going to do this all by myself.
If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.